All right, welcome to Life's Not Linear. Today, our guest is Shaun Wanzo. Shaun, could you please take a few minutes to introduce yourself and give us a bit of your background?
Okay. I was still considering where I was going to start. I'm a guy that's had this long, winding road, and it's still going. And that's probably, what I want the theme of, this interview to be, to anyone that's, happens to watch it, that's, still trying to, um, you know, still wondering, how their path is going to unfold. I'm a guy that, in my past, I've got it wrong a lot. Made a lot of mistakes, um, you know, got in a lot of trouble. Um, I've been getting in trouble. I was getting in the wrong type of trouble for a long time since I was in kindergarten. So, and there's a story behind that. But, um, you know, I'm also a guy that can be a poster boy. Like it's never too late um, to change your mindset. Change your perspective, and just basically get yourself on the right path. So I got involved. Probably a good place for me to start is um, after high school, I originally attended college. But be honest with you, I was there for all the wrong reasons there, all the wrong reasons at that time. So I flamed out like after about like a semester and not even a full 2 semesters, like a semester and a half. I was just, party, 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 Um, and so once I flamed out, that's where the long winding road to now, to me talking to you now, began. And so basically, like a few years ago, I got involved in social justice work, criminal justice reform, and did a lot of volunteer work for a lot of recognizable organizations. The ACLU is probably going to be the most recognizable to anyone that watches this, but besides that, some very other um, um, some other good organizations have done a lot of good work, whether it be um, just leadership, um, um, man, wisdom. Um, Dang, it's escaping me right now for whatever reason, but it'll come back to me for whatever reason. I can't think of, all the different organizations. But anyway, so I did. And what that did is, the volunteer work, slowly morphed into paid work. Um, and then from the paid work, it kind of came to a crossroads where I was like, okay, I kind of want to venture out on my own, and do my own thing because, and you working for a nonprofit, the nonprofit world is great, and they do a lot of great work. The only thing is that, like, paid positions, are of a premium, um, and there's not a lot of them, particularly with the organizations that I was aligned with. So I wanted to stay on the social justice path, but I was like, okay, now how do I, and I never even heard of the term social entrepreneur at this time. I just knew that, like, I wanted to still advocate, for people, um, but I also wanted to, pay my bills. I wanted to get paid for it. So, coincidentally enough, the idea that I got as far as getting involved in the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion actually came after I attended an event. It was called the Shift event. Connect a Milwaukee Shift event. True story. This is exactly how it went. So I attended the Shift event, and at that time, I had been to a lot of social justice events, and criminal justice reform events. I had been to a whole host of them, but I had never been to an event that was exclusively about, the empowerment and upliftment of women. And I was of the minority. This was the first time, being a male, being a heterosexual male, like I was the minority, and it had a really deep impact on me. So I went to the event. It was great. Speakers were great. People I met that day were great. People from, Jeremy and Angela from Milwaukee, they're great. And I met Rita, coincidentally, I met Rita that night, organizer for Milwaukee. So it was great. And it had a real deep impact on me. So I was up late that night, and of all places, on social media, on LinkedIn, messing around on LinkedIn, I stumbled upon a couple women's profiles. Miranda Wilcox out of Jersey, and man, I am really blowing it as far as remembering names. But anyway, this other woman who's connected to is called Culture Shift Labs, whose name is escaping me. Her name, Andrea Hoffman, from Culture Shift Lab. So I stumbled upon their profiles on LinkedIn. I saw the type of work that they were doing, connected to DEI, and immediately diversity, equity, and inclusion. And immediately, I had never heard of that field, to that point. So I read their profiles, and I was like, this could be it. So then I started doing my research. I started doing my due diligence and, studying and researching the field and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, I think this can work, for what I'm about, what I stand for, the type of work I want to do, the type of avocation I want to do. So then I created my company, Conduit LLC. And that's, and then I crafted my own training and curriculum entitled The Perception Benefit, which is basically about helping people in the workplace and cultures, in other cultures, with organization, educational space, but with a main emphasis at that time, on the workplace, expanding their lens, expanding their perceptions when connecting and helping to make people of marginalized groups, historically marginalized groups, in particular BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, feel more inclusive, because it's one thing to diversify a space, but if people don't feel included, if they still feel isolated in that space, it's really, you just really check the box, so to speak. So that's the, kind of my professional path. At the same time, I got reconnected. I didn't mention that before. I got connected to UWM, and that's probably the most important thing. Because I know a lot of students are going to see this interview, that I want them to take away from this. So here, this same knucklehead, who went to college fresh out of high school, staying in the dorms, not really getting in trouble, but like I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for college life. I just wasn't ready. And at that time, a lot of things have changed at UWM, but I don't know who had the bright idea of putting a club. At the time, they shut it down now, but at the time when I was going there was a club called Channel One inside the dorms, inside co-ed dorms. That was a horrible idea. For someone like me that was undisciplined at the time, that was a horrible idea. So yeah, there was an actual club.
Like, what was it about?
You said what?
What was the club about in the dorms?
It was a regular, like almost like a nightclub that you would find like downtown or something inside the dorms.
That's wild.
It was super wild. So it wasn't like a club that you can go to at any time, at every night, but like because the college weekend normally starts like Thursday night because most people don't schedule too many classes on Friday. Mm-hmm. So every Thursday night, and I'm still connected with some old friends right now. Shout out to my guy Cyrus and Big Rod, who both played for UWM, played basketball, who got a heavy emphasis on Facebook now, who went on, I think, Cyrus, I think he teaches and coaches at Rufus King High School. But anyway, we were all there together, so they know. So if they ever see this interview, they're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. So anyway, but they were more disciplined than me. So anyway, but that's a good lesson to learn, that for someone that, was there for all the wrong reasons, ended up flaming out, dropping out, didn't even make it through the second semester, even though UWM was more than gracious. They were trying to work with me. They reached out to me because originally I didn't even sign up in time for the second semester. I moved out the dorms You know, and they reached out to me, got me back enrolled in my classes, was trying to counsel me and do, and I just wasn't in the right mind frame, you know, at that time, and didn't understand, you know, just how privileged I was, you know, to be at a university, and to be, you know, being able to just have the chance to receive that education. Um, but I got reconnected to the university in 2018 around the same time, a little after, you know, getting in the, you know, social justice space and within the networks. And um, I don't have everything figured out, you know, and that's another important message. You know, even me, I don't, you know, so like, you know, I know a lot of students, you know, they're currently in school are going to be watching this interview, is that, you know, it's okay, you know, if you don't have, you know, especially within those first 2 years, even if, you know, I mean, ideally, you know, they want you to have things and declare your major by your junior year or the, you know, the summer before and all that, you know, that's how things are normally structured and set up. But it doesn't happen like that for everybody. You know, it doesn't. You know, and even me, you know, so like I started out as an IST, information science and technology major. But to be honest with you, I'm horrible in math. I'm horrible in math. You know, I love the concept. I love computer science. I love those things. I'll sit up and whether it's popular science or popular mechanics or one of those other, I'll read about that stuff all day, you know, if I had the time. But to be honest with you, me doing calculus and no, it's, you know, I have a hard enough time with algebra. So I had a hard decision to make, you know, like, do I continue down this path, knowing, you know, and you know, Tar, knowing the disparities within the field when it comes to Black people and people of color and stuff like that. And there was, you know, a couple friends that were disappointed because they wanted me to continue down that path, because people like me are needed. Um, but you know, that, you know, that can help correct, you know, some of the um, let's just put it, inequitable and disparities within, you know, when it comes to algorithms and things like that, because all that stuff is, at the end of the day, is subjective, you know, depending on the person that's, you know, inputting the data into the, you know, the algorithm, because they're going to input it according to how they see things or how they see that particular subject or how they see the world. So, so I switched to public health. So I'm currently a major in public health. But, you know, if I'm honest with myself, if I'm totally honest with myself, my strengths are, and you see, you know, because I've just talked your head off. My strengths are in, you know, communication. You know, they really are. Communication. So like right now, I'm once again thinking, you know, well, communication and business, you know, those are kind of like where my strengths lie. So I'm right now, you know, I'm on the fence once again with do I go into journalism, and then there's like a digital path, and balance that with communications and film and stuff like that. You know, communication arts, or do I, you know, head the business route and then just take other classes? So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that is. Thank you for sharing that, because I feel like a lot of students don't talk about maybe the struggles and the transitions and the switching majors and the taking time off, and it's kind of like taboo, or some, I don't know, students would rather stay in a major that they don't like and finish it than like maybe take the risk of switching. So I appreciate you sharing that. I kind of wanted to step back, and I'm wondering, you said you mentioned this story in kindergarten, and then I'm wondering also what made you want to get into the like social justice space and the criminal reform, like before going to the shift and like these kind of Milwaukee events?
Um, you know, just to be honest with you, it's some of the most equipped and skilled people to advocate and create the most change. You know, when you look at social justice, criminal justice reform, are people, you know, like myself. that have the lived experience.
Yeah.
So like I said, it's a funny story about me in kindergarten, and I don't know what the hell I was thinking, but just wanting to, I don't know where the idea came from, but I remember being 5 years old and just remembering like, hey, I don't want to be at school today. I don't want to be here. So I'm gonna go home. You know, and I remember at that time my mother was working and going to school herself, so she was at home, like kind of like in a like break. I can't remember exactly like how her break, her schedule broke down, but I know she was like working. Her work hours were around her school hours, so she just happened to be home when I came home. She's like, "What are you doing home?" And I, I remember coming up with this whole lie. So like I said, I've just been that was kind of like the start of my knucklehood path. I was just like, yeah, they told us we can go home early, because I don't know. So I can't remember my exact words. I just know I came up with a lie very quick, because I wasn't expecting her to be home. So, and this was in the mind of a 5-year-old. Scary, I know. So other than that, though, I mean, it's no secret, it's public record. You know what I'm saying? I ended up, later in life, I got in trouble. I've been in trouble with the law. I've been out on the streets. I'm talking about like, seriously, in a heavy sense. Been out there, not like living on the streets like homeless. Fortunately for myself, but like, just being involved in street activity. I've been involved in street organizations, things that like, if you talk to me, today, like you would never guess, not in a million years. And so that led me to, being incarcerated, unfortunately. Um, and, you know, after all the turbulence, all the back and forth, um, all the back and forth, I started, kind of having this awakening, and a lot of it, and that's why education is so important. And, there's more than one, college, tech school, just things like that. That's the um, traditional, route. But there's also something called self-education. So, just, having all the time in the world and just reading everything, every book that I can get my hands on, that was kind of like the beginning of my path, as far as like, if I can trace things back and draw, you can definitely draw parallels, because I read everything, every type of, whether it was a scholar, whether it was philosopher, um, economics, history, anything I can get my hands on. And that's what you know, led me to start like looking at things around me, in the world. That's my perception started expanding, um, you know, and that's when I started looking at things in a whole different light. And then you mentioned the books before you recorded. I actually wrote those books and got them published, while I was, away, locked up, whatever you want to call it. And then a funny thing happened. After writing those books, I wrote a story that I've yet to publish, that I'm going to, that was about a guy that, cleaned his whole life up, created a nonprofit, started doing work in the community, and then, started solving, kind of like a mystery, um, started solving, crime himself. So kind of like as a PI. So, well, more in particular, it was a murder. So, but anyway, there was something, I can't really explain it, Tara, but there was something about me writing that book. And when I wrote that book, I made sure to, like, I don't think there's like one curse word. I don't think profanity, I should say. There's no profanity, nothing of a salacious manner. But, I still was able to make it, add a lot of suspense, and adventure to it. So it was something about writing that book and then he had became a Muslim. It was just a lot of things. It was something about writing that book, because any creative that watches this, and you yourself knows that, or any writer, any person that's wrote fiction knows that, to write fiction, like you have to see things from these characters, through their eyes. When you create a character, you have to really slip into that role, and to make the character authentic, you have to, it takes a lot of sitting there and thinking like, okay, what really would this person do? A person that has this personality, really, what would this person do in this given moment? So that had a profound effect on me. And then at that point, like for a few years, I was the type of person that would be sitting around. We used to joke about this a lot too. I was the type of person that would sit around and talk about the issues a lot. Talk about what's going on, what needed to be changed. And it was just finally at that point, after I wrote that book, when I got out, and then I had a couple other, believe it or not, there's, and that's what I shouldn't even say, believe it or not, like I told you when I started telling you about this part of my background, there are a lot, there are a few people, and some of them have heavy social media presences, or have a heavy social media presence, that are doing a lot of great work in the community that I actually met when I was locked up, and that had a profound effect on me too, because I kept in contact with them, and then some of them got out first and, started doing great work, and still are doing great work. And so once I got, it's like, okay, enough is enough. I'm tired of talking. I want to do. And so, yeah, that's how it went.
Thank you for sharing that. That's great. I definitely get caught in that cycle of like talking, getting excited, but then it's like, all right, like what am I gonna do? What's next? So I think that's great to hear. I feel like I have like so many questions, but I really, I guess if you don't mind talking more about your experience, I guess before you were incarcerated, and then kind of during, you said you were reading a lot of books and like kind of reflecting a lot. And so I'm wondering now, like looking back, uh, what are some of the things that you were able to take away from those experiences? Like whether it was like lessons learned, revelations, um, things that added value to like your books, your work, and overall just kind of like how did those experiences help shape you? Because that's a very hard thing to do, to, like you said, kind of reshape and bounce back from that. And so I'm wondering how that part of you has helped who you are today. So that was a long
Um,
question.
okay. I'm trying to figure out where to start with that. It was a loaded question, and I mean, there's a lot of different moving parts there. Um, I think, just okay, being, um, a product, of multiple systems, and just, having that lived experience, and then going back and then reading about what's so wrong, what's how products of the system are created, and what are the disparities and um, inequities, within these systems, um, and then that's what helped me, like light bulbs started going on, realizing that, a lot of times, I understand the thought process that, we are free will. Um, you are responsible for you and the choices you make. And, thus, or, yeah, and then thus you're responsible for, whatever consequences that come from that. I understand that to a certain point, but what a lot of people that have that, that follow that train of thought, or, you know, have that ideology. What they miss is the marginalization part, you know. So if a person is, you know, and this is a great, there's two great examples I'm gonna use.
Mhm.
I saw, you know, a guest, um, I believe it was on Shay's show, her podcast, and he was talking about like a person, and I can relate to that. A person that grows up, you know, in a patriarchal system, a man that grows up in a patriarchal system, and then he grows up around nothing but misogyny, you know, just misogynistic behavior, misogynistic attitudes. Um, 9 times out of 10, that person is going to grow to be a misogynist,
Mhm.
you know. And then, so the other example I would use is, um, a person grows up in an environment that's, you know, nothing but negativity. Nothing, if you can imagine that, nothing but negativity is perpetuated on a daily basis. There's nothing positive in this person's environment, and it's intergenerational. So everyone in his environment, whether in his home or her home, let me throw that out there, in the person's home or in the person's environment, you know, is is a lot of intergenerational trauma is perpetuated. And then you throw in the fact there's a lack of resources, there's a lack of education, there's a lack of jobs, just a lack of a structured path to what we know as upward mobility, you know, in this country. Um, how do you think this person is going to, what kind of product do you think comes from this kind of system? You know, so anyway, so just reading, so that's how things help me out, actually having that lived experience. You know, being, you know, my mother was, you know, only 16 when she had me, you know, even though she married my father, she married, you know, she married my father, and then having my sister, you know, a year and a half later, you know, her and my father ended up splitting when I was like 3 or 4. She was still really young, you know, still coming into her own, you know, trying to figure out life, but with 2 kids, you know. And then we moved out on the West Coast, Southern California. Um, and, you know, just that experience alone, me just, you know, walking to school and the things, and then with her trying to, you know, get her life on track, going to school, going to work, you know, it left me alone a lot, you know. You know, she made sure that, you know, my sister, you know, was, you know, she was constantly around my sister or taking my sister with her. But me, you know, being the slightly older one, it left me to fend for myself a lot. So I saw a lot, I heard a lot, experienced a lot at a very young age. You know, saying just walking to school and walking back to school. So, you know, it's just, so that's, I hope I answer. And if I didn't answer any part of your question, you know, please just, you know, reiterate, you know, what you want to know, you know, from that question. But like, I think, you know, for some of it at least, you know, that's the best answer I can provide.
Mhm. No, you definitely, I mean, it was a long-winded question, but you definitely answered it and provided a lot of value. It is, like you said, you know, there's a lot of people who are like, you know, the choices you make, you know, frame your life, but I think a lot of people forget about the environment you're in too, and you don't always, it's a privilege to like be in a good environment, to be in an environment that's positive or healthy and etc. And I think a lot of people, like, we forget, like, yeah, you can make great choices, but some choices like are just handed to you and you didn't make them. It's like, how do I make the best of this? And like you said, it's hard. If you grow up in a misogynistic environment, like that's all you know. If you grow up in a negative environment, that's like, that's the normal. um so thank you
Yeah,
for
it took
sharing
me
perspectives.
that, and that's why that, you know, events like the shift event and stuff like that, not saying like I had come into my own by the time I came to the event, but that's like a important, I say that's an important component of my path, you know. So it's like it took a lot of recalibration of my perception, a lot of deep soul searching, a lot of introspective thinking, you know, to um, start to you know, relate to women in a different way, cultivate and develop a higher level of respect, and understand, like truly understand. This is where the education and being able to really examine your environment and society for what it is, not for what it's supposed to be, but for what it is, and figuring out for myself, like, wow, this is, not only is this, in a very, there's a lot of oppression, systemic oppression built into the systems that, compose our society, for, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, but just way things are set up, it's still oppressive, and, there's still like that patriarchal presence or emphasis within the system is still, very prevalent, and presents a lot of challenges and a lot of double standards to women that I wasn't recognizing before. So it took me, but like, now what if a person is not able to do that work on their own, or that person, or there's no intervention, there's no mentors or anyone to get you to see or teach you something, different, then what happens? So
that was actually what I was going to ask, is like, how did you even decide or begin to kind of recalibrate and want to look at all these different things and better understand?
Like I said, just, a good place for me to start is just, I can't really put my finger on it, Tara, to like one particular moment or one particular activity, but it definitely was, that, a lot of the books that I read, expanded my horizons, me using my art, once again, art being very important, me using my art, and kind of channeling it in a different way. Because up to that point, don't get me wrong, I'm not ashamed of, the books or the book covers that I posted to social media. There's definitely a lot of salationness and profanity, but that's just the fluff. They're really good stories, and I'm proud of it. I wrote, I got a bunch of stories I never did anything with, but still, there was something about me channeling my creativity and my energy and really challenging myself to kind of create the same kind of story without that stuff, without the fluff. It really, that really helped, expand my perception and add to it, and just, kind of change the way I look at things. And then once I got out, just getting involved, just getting what we call the work, just getting involved in the work, where, don't get me wrong, human beings are human beings. So even people involved in the work, activists, change agents, change makers, advocates, like we definitely have our flaws. People are definitely still flawed human beings. And then, a lot of the most notable, or the best organizers or activists or whatever their title is, a lot of them, have paths like similar to mine, so anyway, I just want to add that, like, by no means, are we better than anybody else, or, perfect human beings, but still just being around, you know, that was weird. That message I just got. I lost my train of thought. Oh, but just being around that energy, Tara. Just being around people that, like, no matter what, we're not perfect. We all have our flaws, but being around people that really want to dismantle systemic racism, systemic oppression, racial injustice, the patriarchal system, inequalities when it comes to women, that promote the upliftment, and empowerment of women, that want to see women in leadership. Just all those different things, and that fight for justice for all the historically marginalized groups, whether it be LGBTQ, perfectly able, veterans, on and on and on, just everyone that falls in that category, just being connected to all the, you know, so that's kind of like where the links in my chain, you know, that's helped me, you know, constantly. And I'm still a work in progress. You know, I'm still recalibrating and retooling and, you know, expanding my perception and trying to be as open-minded as possible, because that's on how am I going to, you know, I just look at it like, if I'm not open and receptive, you know, and challenging myself to be better than I was the day before and constantly recalibrating, how am I going to teach anybody else that, you know? So.
Oh, thank you, Shaun, for just like sharing so much today and really connecting a lot of dots, I feel like, with your experiences and the way you've been able to recalibrate and the people you've like surrounded yourself with. So I just appreciate your time today and for sharing like what you've learned.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Thank you for having me. You know, and I just, if one person, you know, if this inspires one person or just, or not, or just helps one person that might be struggling right now with everything that's going on, you know, in the country, you know, and even before the country, you know, even before like this new collective consciousness or awakening, um, that was just, you know, whether it's their educational path or where they fit in this world, this society, you know, this helps one person, and I'm happy.